bringing you inside the USL Championship and League One.
Segmer's got there, Marquinhos! He's been knocking on the door! He knocks it down!
Diving into all the biggest stories and top headlines.
You are ripping and roaring today.
This is USL All Access.
It's almost impossible to recreate that level of magic.
With Mike Watts and Devon Kerr on SiriusXM FC.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. Beautiful Tuesday night, jam-packed show. We're going to motor a little bit here because our interviews are that good. Head coach of Loudoun United, Ryan Martin, is going to join the show, as well as newly appointed head coach of the Oakland Roots, Benny Feilhaber. Some congratulations in order as our co-host, Mike Watts, and his wife, Olivia, welcome baby boy Michael Raymond this past Saturday. He's out walking the cat. He's officially on dad duty. Welcome, Mike. It is a whirlwind. I hope you enjoy every second of it. We'll get your thoughts when you come back from sabbatical. I need that, by the way. You tend to get one every single year. Within all of that, Joe Malfa, kind enough to join us. Joe, big news yesterday. Early on in the morning, Pacific time, we'll say right around 9 a.m., Oakland Roots dismissed Gavin Glitton and assistant coach Jesse Cormier. They then, half a day later, decide that, you know what, they found their guy. Benny Failhaber comes over. He was involved in US Open Cup earlier. Certainly the coaching stint that was at Sporting Kansas City, too. I know we're flying here. Your immediate reactions, thank you for joining the show, of what was a whirlwind of the day in the Western Conference for the Oakland Roots.
Yeah, I feel like I guess I'm the magnet for the Roots, I think, this year. I filled in for you a couple of weeks ago, and we dove in on what's wrong with Oakland. I filled in for Watts this week, and we've got a new coach to talk about. But in all seriousness, I think it's a good move for Oakland at this point in time. Like, one of the craziest stats or true facts about this whole thing is now they're on head coach number 6 if you include interims that they've had along the way. This is the first coach they've hired that has actual head coaching experience previously, which is wild
to me.
He didn't end on the most positive note with SKC2 in his last year. They finished in 10th, but before that, finished in 3rd, made the playoffs, a good, fun team, comes from a good pedigree in that SKC umbrella, played under a lot of great coaches. This feels like maybe the fire that needs to be lit under this team and these players to go on. Look, as bad as it's been for Oakland, they're 3 points out of a playoff spot. So this seems like it could be possibly the spark that they need.
Two big things for me. One is more of a statement. Feel free to react. The other one's an actual question for you. I talked about early morning. The official announcement came at 8:53 a.m. Pacific time that Gavin Glitton and supporting coach Jesse Cormier were relieved of their duties. The announcement for Benny Feilhaber was 7 hours and 29 minutes later at 4:22. Wow. Why? I'm speechless. I've never seen anything like it.
There was something lined up there. I mean, let's stop beating around the bush. That was clearly something that was lined up in some capacity. It wasn't an accident. There was definitely research done. The stretch that Oakland was in, you can see the writing on the wall. Last year, they had a stretch from late July into late August where they went unbeaten in 5 matches. It got them up to 2nd place in the Western Conference, but then it nosedived from that point on. After that unbeaten run, they finished the year 1-6-1. They begin this season 3-7-1. They played 3 Division III teams this year, an Open Cup and Jaeger Cup. They didn't win any of those games. So The writing was on the wall. You can sense that they had maybe something brewing in the background. I think that explains how quickly this came together.
Speaking of something brewing, before we depart here, again, apologies to everyone at home. We got to rush just because of how good the interviews are that are coming right around the corner. There's no doubt in my mind that the culture is set, that they've got a good following out there. The fans are coming. At what point in time do we look to the front office here? Given the amount of coaches, interim or not, that we've seen in such a finite amount of time, results that have been so inconsistent, lackluster for sure at times on the field. Do we look at Jordan Farrell and technical director? Do we look at the president, Lindsey Brenz? How do you view this situation?
Jordan at some point has to come in the crosshairs here. As much as I hate to say it, enjoyed talking to him, his first year coach of the team, and arguably he's been the best coach they've ever had in theory in terms of the results. But it seems at some point the Bills got to come due there, and you look above. Lindsey, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt, just not knowing the inner workings of the club, how involved she is on the soccer side specifically versus the business side, because from a business perspective, and you alluded to it, they're killing it right now. I mean, attendance up, local TV success, merchandise, by all those metrics, they're crushing it right now. The only thing that's lacked is the on-field portion. So at some point, you can't move all the players. You can only change so many coaches. At some point, then it turns back to Jordan Farrell.
And here's my thing with all of that. That's great. But if I'm a player, I don't care about jersey sales. I don't care about how many numbers are ticking up on the old boob tube, as they call the TV back in the day. I care about winning. And it's going to be difficult to continue this venture if you do not get it right in the locker room. There's no doubt that they've had issues since day one. Wish them nothing but the best. Certainly the departure to Gavin Glinton, incredible person. Met with Jesse a couple times, actually at FGCU prior to his arrival at Oakland. Another really good guy. Wish them nothing but positive things moving forward. Again, we're motoring here. Apologies. Right around the corner, Ryan Martin, head coach from Loudoun United, joins us on USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. Stick around.
Let's get back to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everybody, to USL All Access on this beautiful Tuesday evening, June 3rd. Oh, it's magical. It's interesting when Mike Watts goes and walks the cat because we get graced with so many beautiful people's presence. While we introduced Joe Malfa before, the real stars of the show are the interviews that we referenced in segment one. Certainly what is Ryan Martin and the incredible start to the season in the Eastern Conference, the work that they've done in USL Jägermeister Cup and beyond, but he's been at it for quite some time. I just want to read out some of the resume here before I actually let this young man come on. Assistant coach under one of my favorite people in the country in the footballing world, Jay Vidovich. Then he left, went to Toronto, was a scout there while Greg Vanny was at the helm. Then off to sunny, you guessed it, Columbus. While Triple G, Greg Berhalter, was in charge of the Columbus Crew. An unreal job, one of my personal favorites, of the building and structure with John Harkes of FC Cincinnati in their inaugural year of the USL Championship back in 2016, and all the glory that came with the names along with it. Then went to DC United, was the director of the Academy from 2017 to 2019, also held the title of Director of Player Personnel. Took over Loudoun officially on May 30th to 2019. And now, while I can see the quality that is, certainly one Joe Malfa has been able to dissect the greatness of this man on the sidelines, it hasn't exactly been all roses and perfume. And yet now, sitting third in the Eastern Conference, sitting third overall in the Players' Shield race. We'll get to that in a second. And he welcomes some other success off the field. Ryan Martin from Loudoun United joins us. Ryan, I tried to do the best while being short there, but dude, the CV is ridiculous. How are you, my friend?
Good. I'll have to send you a check and make sure it clears for that one. That was pretty good. Appreciate that. No, thanks for having me on for sure.
Oh, always, brother. Yeah, just I'll co-sign it to Joe. He'll be happy to cash it. You know, just post date it, right?
Easy there.
Yeah. First and foremost, chatted about this before coming on. I got the go ahead. I don't always ask for permission. Fortunately, this time I walked the narrow line. You and your wife Zoe, welcomed your first child. The journey in fatherhood is always an interesting one. Finn Bryce Martin, welcome to the world. How we doing in the land of fatherhood? And also, by the way, having a career as a head coach of a professional team.
We are finding our way. I don't think, and we got a couple other guys that are expecting on the team, and I don't think you're fully prepared until it actually happens. And no matter what you read or people tell you, until the baby comes, you have no idea. So it's been great though. It's been a blessing, and it's been a long journey to get here for Zoe and myself. And we're lucky to have Finn and be a part of our lives. And it can't, unfortunately, you can't always choose the time that you can have a kid and all that stuff. So it comes in the middle of our busiest stretch of the season, but no, it's been great. Players have been great. Zoe's been great, and having Finn has been remarkable. So I'm incredibly happy, and hopefully he can become a soccer player one day, and maybe not a coach, but a player, and we can go from there.
Are we already thinking about running a two-striker system, or are you guys just good with the single one right now, and you'll work out what the rest looks like later?
Yeah, we're gonna go with the single one for now and see what the rest looks like. And I don't think we're opposed to having a two front, especially goal scorers, but we'll kind of see where life takes us right now.
Love that. Mentioned earlier, best start in team history through 10 games, 21 points on the books right now. Third in the East. You guys hold the tiebreaker based upon points per game versus in-conference opponents. Dear Lord, that's a mouthful, but it is a thing. So you guys are third in the Players' Shield race right now behind Louisville City and the Charleston Battery. Get me to the point of kind of where you guys are at right now, kind of dissect what have been the first 10 games and what led you to this early success.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think we got to almost look back at last year and our, quote unquote, coming up short or failure, if you will. I think when we looked at the last 6 games, we were in a pretty good position to make the playoffs, and we came up short. So we started there. That was our starting point in the off season. We went and did a post-mortem, myself, some of the players that were returning, kind of figured out, okay, where did we come up short? And we really figured out that as we got late in the season, especially like Indy game, Pittsburgh game, with about 5 to play, teams started sitting much deeper against us and countering, and they changed a lot of the way they handled us. And to be honest with you, it worked. We couldn't break teams down. We couldn't get in behind a low block. We were giving up goals in transition and on restarts. And then on the flip side, our attacking restarts weren't nearly good enough. So when we looked at this season and we brought back the amount of people we did, it was a conscious decision to do so, because we all had a shared experience of where we came up short, where we think we can fix it and improve. And that was really the starting place to 2025. And so we've spent a lot of time breaking down low blocks, working on, and it's hard. It's one of the hardest things you can do in our game. And we still saw where, against Miami, we didn't create much. And so we, again, went back and just continued rehashing it and going over some things. And so for us, that's just been a big situation for us. So we hammered it going into Louisville. It's obviously not a low block in Louisville, but you still saw some pretty good chances that broke out and some pretty good quality. I think when you have a locker room of guys that were disappointed and hungry, I think it brings in a focus and a drive to be better and to continue to improve. We knew we had a good group coming back. We knew we were betting on like Bushi, Abdul Latif improving. We certainly weren't betting on him to improve maybe this much, but we were certainly betting on improvement. Wesley Leggett to improve, Riley Bidwa to improve. We were betting on Hugo Faru, like Giannis Learman, J.K. Lansons. The list goes on for guys that we thought, they would improve. And it was the type of guys that we brought in were growth mindset guys that were winners. And so when you want to get better and continue to improve, that was kind of what led us to today. And we're kind of sat in and, obviously went through an ownership change, and no one's really sure what, where that was going to go. So the whole thing went with, okay, well, let's fight together. Let's be together, be collective, and go after it. And we've just really taken one game at a time. And, obviously it's great to be where we are, but we are hungry for more.
What do you think is the difference this year? I mean, I think it's been publicized the last couple of years, even back when there was more of that, DC Academy team type of stigma around the team, right? Like going through those years into now, it was never really a secret that the resources were a little bit different for you guys versus other teams. But this year is where the results have really turned in the biggest way. What makes this group most different from past years, and what gives you the confidence that it won't fizzle this year in the way that it might have last year?
So I think 2 things. I think one is I don't think I've ever had more than 4 players return from one season to the next. So when you come into preseason, you talk about the youth and rotating and bringing kids in from DC and having one of the youngest teams in the country or in the world, really, 2 years ago. I've never had to be able to basically start layering upon principles. It's always basically been starting from scratch. And when you do that in this league, and I think that's where you see what Danny's done in Louisville, with that continuity of the group. When Mark was going to with Sacramento going to the Open Cup final, it was a continuity of the group. And I think that's a very underrated thing in our league with the continuity of it. So, there's obviously more investment. We're able to bring in better players. We're still one of the lower groups in the league, but we're at least in a competitive world where, 2 years ago, I never would have been able to get on a phone call with Florian Below or half of these guys. It would have been, hey, like what you're doing, like your style of play, but we're going to go elsewhere. And now we can at least have the conversation. And then when you have a good group of people and guys fighting for the same thing, it makes it significantly better. And they're guys with experience too, which helps as well. When I talk to Florian, for example, it's easy because he's been through that at some point, or Pedro Santos across his career has been in a moment like that. And even like a Tommy McCabe and some of the even younger guys, they've got those experiences where it helps Bushi and Riley and Moses Nyman grow. And if you don't have older players that can help grow, and help guys develop, then you're just kind of missing a big chunk of where they can go.
Speaking with head coach Ryan Martin of Loudoun United, currently sit third in the Eastern Conference in USL Championship. Big one on the weekend, hosting the Charleston Battery, 1-3. Got to be the biggest game of the week in the USL Championship. Ryan, you mentioned earlier ownership changing hands. Most recently, back on April 17th, there was the merger announcement where Loudoun United joins Virginia Revolution. You guys unite. But that also creates a partnership of what is now Virginia Revolution, DC United, and a group named Attain Sports. Now, the management's going to be held by Jim Miller, who oversees Virginia Revolution. I want to quote a line here so that you can maybe lead us in the direction of what you guys are trying to establish. The goal is to establish a professional pathway from grassroots development to the highest level of professional soccer in the United States. All due respect to that quote. I've seen you produce players that have gone on to MLS, that have gone on to Europe, that you've done it from a local area. You've done it from the DC United Academy. You probably better than anyone in this country recognize talent development from a young age into college, academy, so on and so forth. So how does this partnership now differentiate itself from what we've seen in the past and then finding success moving forward?
Yeah, I think the goal from Jim and VA Revolution is to really develop an academy underneath Loudoun, and where we would normally get players from DC, they would come in like a Gavin Turner or Ted Cudi Pietro, etc. They'd come in, we'd work with them, we'd develop them, they'd end up signing with DC United, and it'd be out the door off there. I think VA Revolution's mentality is, can we take a 10-year-old kid and get him through the system, and put him into Loudoun, give him an opportunity, and see what he can do? And it basically becomes a formal pathway where the top of the pyramid is Loudoun, where currently or in the previous years, DC was always the top of the pyramid. And I think that's a little bit different. And like Bushi is an interesting case study too, because the reality is, Loudoun has, his rights. So if he's going to go into the MLS, it's pretty much open for, other teams and other opportunities, where in the past it would be your option is DC United, and that's your only situation. So we can operate a little bit more independently. I know VA Revolution's trying to build the player pool and quality and trying to do some things there, and I think obviously it will take time, but I think it could be an interesting experiment, an interesting project for sure.
You mentioned Bushi, and again, for those that don't know, that's Abdel Latif Abukora is having a terrific season so far. Reports have been out there that Europe is maybe knocking on the door, whether that's near-term, long-term, to be determined, but it's obviously out there in the ether. And I'm just curious, you've been able to see the last couple of years of his development, and you've seen players that have gone on to bigger things, as Devon mentioned before. There's so often instances where a player maybe goes to Europe and then within 6 months he's loaned right back because it wasn't the right fit. So without mentioning any clubs, don't get yourself in trouble here, but is there a specific country that fits the playing style and development for Abdel Latif that you'd maybe like to see him go to?
I think when you're looking at someone like him, you're probably looking more in your Spains and Italy would be my guess, where it's not a super physical athletic league, but it can be more soccer related. I think when you start getting very physical and second balls and competing, I think he'll get there because you have to. I think when you're looking at professional soccer, you have to be able to play that way. But I think that's probably the next evolution of, okay, if you're in a system that's maybe not necessarily ideal because coaching change or whatever it could be at the in a different club. Okay, well, how do I adjust, adapt, and put my game into it? So I think there's a lot of options. I think there's some teams in the MLS that would be good fits too, just stylistically. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. My big one for him is just to make sure he keeps his feet right in front of him and stays here, and the rest will take care of itself.
Ryan, I want to talk about that adaptation zone, but more so on the coaching side and how it affects the players. So whether it's navigating the departure of a top prospect that possibly could be, if it's the rebuild, as you mentioned, coming into a season almost from scratch, right? That's normal for you guys. Or even the hybrid relationship we've seen over the years with DC United, players coming up, coming down. There is a lot of change within all of that. It's difficult to establish routines for players, rhythm on the field, rhythm just even in training sessions. How has that helped mold you as a coach? And more specifically, how does it then translate to immediate success or even long-term success, to be fair, with your players?
Yeah, I think one is I think when people throw challenges at you and adversity, whether it's pulling player, I've had the morning of games where I had a guy scheduled to play getting calls saying the guy can't play, or I remember a couple years ago when a couple of my guys that were signed only for Loudoun got called into the Open Cup with DC on a short-term loan. I was told 30 minutes before the game, two of my own guys could only play 45 minutes. And so I went through a phase and probably a little bit of an evolution in my coaching where at first it was, kind of woe is me and this sucks and this isn't fair and this and that, where I've kind of evolved through the course of it, knowing that that's not going to get me anywhere. Where if I sit here and piss and moan, and the reality is, can I basically normalize it as much as possible? Can I talk about it with the players as much as possible? So there is a transparency. There is some things that are out of all of our control in this game that we have to just deal with. So it's become like a evolution of having to deal with it. I've had to switch formation styles of play. With DC United, that when it was a true second team, I was playing, 1 minute like Wayne Rooney, the next like Hernan Lasota, the next moment like so we've gone kind of all over, which is why like what you're seeing this year and last year really is my vision of the game and how I see it, because it is my ability to do it. But yeah, I think just in terms of my mentality and the way I deal with players is more honest, open, transparent, and it's made me take a step back and understand what I can really control and what I should spend my own energy wasting on.
There's no such thing as an easy out in USL anymore, which I think, to be fair, you guys know because you used to be looked at as one of those easy outs during the tough times. But your schedule ahead is particularly brutal. Devon mentioned already the Charleston game coming up this weekend. Then it's Detroit City. Then it's on the road against a Hartford team that's maybe starting to find things a little bit, 3 ties in a row against Detroit City, Louisville, Indy. And then you end the month at home against Louisville, who it feels like you've played 17 times already this year. On the bright side, 3 of those games are at home. The downside, they're all tough. Do you go into a tough stretch like this sort of addressing it head on with the team and have a target number that you'd like to come out of the month of June with in terms of points?
We've tried that before. Last year we did that. For example, we broke the season down in certain blocks and had wanted to set goals of hitting a certain amount of points per block. I found it didn't really work, and it kind of let the guys drift off into looking at what's not right in front of them and looking down the line. And for us, we are the best right now when we follow our process, and which is taking one game at a time, and it really is learning from one and going to the next, and trying to be better week to week. So yeah, we know it's a difficult stretch. Obviously we started with Louisville this past weekend, which is great. But the other thing we've also found is when we've played like a Louisville the last 2 times, for example, it forced us to be better, and it forced us to improve, and it forced us to be a better team. So we actually really quite like these games right now. Like I know Ben, for example, this weekend against Charleston is going to force us to be better, and force them to be better is my hope on our side. We've got to deliver that as well. But when you play the top teams in the league, you have to learn from it, and you tend to learn a lot more, even wins and losses. Like this past Louisville game, we take a whole different set of learnings from it, even though we won, because it is a good team and because what Danny's done there. And like you said, there is no easy game in this league anymore. And I was back when we had a bunch of second teams, and there were some based on when you see a roster of 14 players and 3 subs because the first team scoured the group. And okay, that's a little bit easier, or it's a little bit tougher depending on how you look at it. But yeah, it's a tough league, and I think it's a good league because there's so many really good coaches that force you to improve, and it really challenges me to grow as a coach. And if I would have sat here and said, hey, 5 years ago, I was just as good of a coach, I'd be lying to you, because the reality is I'm significantly better. In fact, when I go through my notes and I see training sessions, or I see, pregame talks that I've done or different things, I look back in horror because of how far I think I've come as well. And a lot of it's I believe in getting better. So I've done a lot of licensing and stuff like that. I work with a coach who helps me on the side. And then, lastly is competition forces you to improve.
Ryan, the areas that you've improved in, Joe and I we've joked about it before on games. We've certainly had little pokes from afar in the best of ways. You mentioned your notes, that little notebook. Are we changing from game to training sessions? Like, do you put it up as bulletin board material on the wall, throwing darts going, you idiot? What exactly is in that special potion that graces the sidelines for 90 minutes in Loudoun games?
Yeah, so I found when in my process, I'm best when at halftime when I can typically give more information and better insight. So typically I'm writing notes throughout the first half of everything from who's on yellows on our team to their team, where we can improve, where we're good in transition, where we're bad. Maybe a couple clips that I'd like us to try to pull to show. I've and it's funny, like you mentioned my history and all that. It's funny, I've always done that, but I think it's because Jay Vidovich does it a lot at Wake Forest, and actually I use a similar book that we came up with at Wake Forest that I printed. My dad did the same thing at Ohio Wesleyan, and it was just something that worked for me and stuck with me. And then when I can go back now and even look at referees that I've had 8 games ago, it gives me an insight of, okay, well, this is what you're getting from this referee, and
don't get yourself fined on our show.
Dude, we did
don't
so
get
well,
yourself
Ryan.
fined.
We were there. We were nearly there, and now you're just hanging us on a cliff, ready to go.
Exactly. Well, I've got a list if you want me to put it up. No, I'm just kidding.
Do you have a fun one on the way out here? That notebook. Does this mean now that we got to go talk to the donors at Wake and let Bobby Muse know we need some books headed your way in the off season?
Yeah, I got to send them up there. Either Bobby or Jay, I know still does it at Pittsburgh, and it's I think it's an easy way to keep my notes so I don't forget things.
Love it. Awesome peek behind the curtain.
The older you get, the more you forget. So
yeah, man. Hey, look, dude, I've got mine myself. My wife is kind enough to donate some of the books from her company, and it's the Mad Hatters, right? Rotations of players and ideas on different profiles, tendencies. I get it. Obviously, your book is a little bit more extensive, and certainly mine has been burned at the stake a couple of times because nobody wants to read it. So, Ryan, appreciate you pulling back the curtain, man. The continued success for you, for your family, not certainly just in the USL Championship, but off the field as well. Always grateful for the insight and the time that you're willing to share with us, good sir.
No, Devon, Joe, appreciate you guys, and appreciate all you do for the league. I know there's a handful of you guys that are pretty big supporters of the league as a whole, which is great to see. And like, I think, people around the country, I think, can dig deeper a little bit and see some pretty good people doing a lot of really good work, whether it's on the media front, the coaching front, the playing front, across the league and USL League One as well.
Thanks, brother. There goes super kind words. There goes Ryan Martin, head coach of Loudoun United again, 3rd in the Players' Shield race, also happens to be 3rd in the Eastern Conference. An opportunity to move up on the weekend. They will host the Charleston Battery, Segra Field, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. We got waves going on in the Western Conference. It's not up the table. We're going to look a little bit further down. Oakland Roots announced the departure, as we mentioned, of Gavin Glitton. About a half day later, it seems that they think they found their man and Benny Feilhaber. He joins us right after the break.
Giving insight to all the biggest moments in Championship and League One. This is USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everybody, to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. We mentioned earlier we're going to get right to it. Waves being made in the Western Conference. Oakland Roots announced the departure of their head coach, Gavin Glitton. And then after lunch, I could even take a breath. One of the coolest people you'll ever meet, in my opinion, humble as he can be, talented beyond belief, and a great human being. They announced Benny Feilhaber as the head coach of the Oakland Roots yesterday around 4:20-ish Pacific time. Well past my bedtime. Certainly after Joe Malfa went to bed because, he can barely reach the top bunk. I digress. We'll get there later. World traveler, Brazil, New York, California, Germany. Shout out to Nordbank Arena, by the way. You and I need to have a beer over that one. We went to England, we did Denmark, came back to the state. We did the Revs, we did Sporting Kansas City, of course, the storied history that is. Also spent some time with the Colorado Rapids. Jump back 5 years. You were involved with Sporting Kansas City, with the first team as an assistant coach at the youth level. Then, of course, most recently, head coach of Sporting Kansas City 2 within MLS Next Pro. Resume speaks for itself. Still don't understand how you were walk-on at UCLA. Again, I'm all over the place here. Benny, welcome, man. Welcome to Oakland. Welcome to USL. How are you, buddy?
Who forced you to make that like good of an introduction on me? I mean, like, what was it? Perfect, like really good human being, excellent soccer player, hell of a like somebody forced you to do that.
I'm just parlaying myself to a future bar tab that may or may not include beers, wine, certainly some bubbly water or still water with lime, whatever your preference is.
That's very German of you.
Yeah, big time, buddy. Listen, crazy couple of hours, right? There's the personal side, there's the professional side. Can you maybe timeline how this played out for you and your family and how you ended up in Oakland?
Yeah, it definitely was a whirlwind, especially, the last 48 hours or so. I had conversations in the past with Barney, the owner here. But, nothing kind of really, kind of became real until very, very recently. And so, it was kind of like what you described, very quick, very surreal. I mean, I remember when I got here to Oakland, it still felt kind of surreal. And it's something that obviously I've been really very looking forward to, right? Being able to coach at a first team level, coaching at SKC2 was awesome. Learned so much, but at the end of the day, it's what I would consider you're not fully the coach. Right. You're still adhering to other people's ideas. You're trying to develop more so than win. You don't necessarily have that full roster day in and day out in training. And so it really is a challenge and virtually impossible to kind of evaluate yourself as a coach and as a team as you can with a first team. Right. And so I've been craving this opportunity, and it's a great opportunity for me here with Oakland. A wonderful club. The facilities are amazing. The roster is talented. And it did come together very, very quickly. And it's only really after today was my first day of actually training, because yesterday the guys had the day off. And so it was only after today's training where it started to feel normal and real. And so I'm very happy to be here. It's exciting. I thought we had a good first day of training. Obviously the energies from all the players are very high. You know how it is with a new coach. You kind of get that bump right off the bat, but hopefully we can sustain that, not only through the first game, but through the rest of the season. We have a lot of ground to make up for to try and be, end up where we want to be at the end of the season.
A few weeks ago, I had a chance to talk to Kerr Zavagin. Actually, I had a call on the SKC St. Louis match, and he said something that really stuck with me, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, but the gist of it was, I have to thread this needle of being a new voice for the team and setting a new course while also acknowledging that I was part of the problem. That's something that a lot of coaches have to contend with when they step in mid-year like this, but that's not something that you have to deal with. You weren't a part of this per se in the way, Gavin Glinton took over for Noah Delgado, and it was that same sort of passing of the torch. So it's a unique situation for you. Given all of that, how, if at all, does that help you from day one, completely coming from outside the organization?
There's the positives and the negatives, right? So the positives is, like you stated, you don't have to, there's anything that happened before I got here had anything to do with me. So it's a clean slate, not only for myself, but also for the players, right? I told them right off the bat, I don't really care how you've played. I don't care if you have or haven't played. Show me who you are as a player. My ideas might be completely different than Gavin's. But I'm gonna evaluate you guys on how quickly you can adapt to the ideas that I put out there, how you fit into the way I want to play. And so that's the positive. The negative is I got to get to know all these guys, right? As an assistant coach, Kerry knows every single player on Sporting Kansas City, and he's well aware of their strengths and weaknesses. And I think that for me is going to be, one of the hardest things early on, because you do want to win right away, right? As a competitor, you want to win right away, but there is that learning process, and there's got to be that understanding from myself. And I got to tell myself that each and every day. And obviously from the players as well. It's trying to, cram in a full preseason in 4 days of work. And that's impossible. It's never going to happen. But can you have the mindset of, yeah, it'd be great to get a result on the weekend, but if you don't get a result, what positives can you take from that weekend and now, take another step the following week? And so that's kind of the mentality. If you ask me on Monday if I'm happy if we don't get 3 points, I'm probably going to tell you I'm not, but that's the mentality that I want to go into it with. We want to do everything to get 3 points on the weekend, but at a bare minimum, you want to see progress that we're going in the right direction.
Speaking with newly named head coach Benny Feilhaber of the Oakland Roots in the USL Championship Western Conference. Benny, something that's always been so intriguing to me that I've never asked any person that's whether they've come in at the beginning of the coaching process, if they come in mid-year, if they were involved in an organization, is the vetting process on your end. You just alluded to some of it. We always hear from clubs, the presidents, the technical directors of, this guy fits our model, right? He understands our game model. He recognizes the profile of players that we have. I want to hear from your side. To your point, you want to be able to get results early, but you also have to learn about all of these guys. Walk us through the ideas on your end of, okay, maybe it's a good fit for your family. Sure, you see the ideas of the club, but the actual individuals that are in that locker room, how do you find out as to whether or not you would connect with them playing-wise, but also as individuals?
Well, individuals, I think it's personal, right? It doesn't have anything to do with soccer. It's, can you connect on a personal level where there's at a bare minimum mutual respect, right? From the coach to the player and player to the coach. And look, that's part of what it is to be a manager, right? Getting to know people, expressing yourself and having them, truly talk to you about who they are and what their ambitions are and what their qualities are on the field. I've started to do that today. Today was the first day that I was able to do that. And so it is not, I wouldn't say a learning process, but it is a process, right? You're not going to win someone over day one, and you're probably not going to lose them as well. So it is, that part of it is important. And then I've always had the thought that as a coach, it's not necessarily, hey, this is my system. Hopefully these players fit into how I want to play. It's, I do have maybe an idea and maybe a formation and how you want to play or how you want to defend or how you want to attack. But at the end of the day, you got to find out what kind of players you have and how they are best put together on a playing field, whether it be, they fit into a 4-3-3 or a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 or whatever it is. And then also what kind of style are you going to play? Is it going to be, high pressing? Do we have the guys that can do that? Do we have guys that can cover in the back on one-on-one defending? Do you have to kind of sit in more and counterattack? Do you have the speed to do that? Do you have the organization and the communication in the back to be able to do that? So definitely it's about getting to know the players before you start making all those decisions. And that's something that I was very clear with the players about. I do have ideas. I have the picture perfect scenario, but at the end of the day, I got to get to know these players first and then figure out what works best with the guys that we have.
You talk about getting to know the players. You're also going to, I guess, to some extent, start getting to know the league. And I'm curious, obviously, while you're entrenched in MLS Next Pro with Sporting Kansas City, was there any sort of eye toward USL, just broader spectrum, keeping an eye on what's going on in U.S. soccer? Or for you, is this going to be a time now where you really have to lean on some individuals on the staff as far as integrating you into USL? Like, for example, this week even, there's plenty of coaches around the league who have plenty of Wilmer Cabrera war stories from all of his time in this league with RGV and El Paso, but it'll be your first time, I believe, coaching against him, right? So little things like that. How heavily will you have to rely on others versus what was your, I guess, pre-existing knowledge of USL and the landscape coming in?
I will have to heavily rely on people, but that's what I would normally do anyways, right? I think that it's integral to your success, your ability to lean on your staff. You need good assistant coaches, you need good, analysts, you need good scouts, and it goes through down the list, right? And I've already had a little bit of that relationship building with the guys that have been, that have been here and are staying. And then to answer the other question, dude, I watch so much soccer, it's not even funny. So yeah, I watch USL Championship. I watch USL League One. I watch MLS Next Pro. I watch obviously MLS. I watch European soccer. I watch pretty much what's on TV. And, also it helped that while I was with Sporting Kansas City, Peter put me on a project to find some of these up and comers and maybe guys that fell through the cracks of MLS that are in the USL Championship and League One that might be, guys worth bringing in to MLS Next Pro or even our MLS side. And there's a couple of guys that we did end up bringing to our MLS Next Pro team. So I am very aware of what the USL Championship looks like. I know, the quality that there is, the types of teams that they that are in this league. Obviously now we're focusing in a little bit more, obviously with El Paso being the first team, what kind of team they are, or how they play. With Wilmer, I have a player that in Beto Avila that played at Sporting Kansas City last year that's there. So again, there's going to be many of those moments of guys that I know or have watched or have coached against. And so I don't think it'll be anything, completely foreign to me, but obviously I will lean on people that have been here before me.
What's success going to look like for you now? Because this is early enough where there's still a good bit of runway. You've got 19 regular season games. The way the Western Conference is, and I'm sure maybe that was one of the first things you looked at, it's tight. There's 6 points separating 5th from 11th where you guys sit. You guys are 3 points off the playoff line. It's all tight. There's still 19 games. So when it's all said and done, what does success look like for you hitting the ground running now at the rest of the season?
Yeah, look, I think at a bare minimum, you want to make the playoffs, and that's always the case in American soccer, not just this league, but any league, right? And with 8 teams out of 12, you expect that if you do a good job as the coach, is getting the best out of the players, putting them in a position to succeed. With the roster that we have, we should make the playoffs. Now, I think that where we land somewhere in that 8, it's hard to kind of say, if it's top 4 and we get a home playoff game, yeah, that would be great. But I don't think finishing in 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th is not necessarily successful. Now, what I would do to add to that is I would love more than anything other than actually making the playoffs and hopefully making a run and winning the whole damn thing. I would love to have a way about us, right? The way we want to play, that we understand that there is a style that we want to play, that our fans can start becoming acquainted with and understand. And I would love for fans to be able to talk about our team and know what they're talking about, right? As opposed to, one game looks like this, the other game looks like that. And so, a style of play, everybody likes the lingo now, the game model or whatnot. But, in a perfect scenario, we want to be entertaining. We want to be high energy. We want to have the ball and be able to control certain aspects of the game, especially at home. But yeah, at the end of the year, I would love to look back on it and say, we made the playoffs. We competed for a championship, whether we won it or not. We competed, and we built a real way of playing. And somebody can say, hey, Oakland Roots plays this way. That would be, I think, a success story.
I think that's a breath of fresh air to a lot of Roots fans tuning in, because over the last couple of years, they've always been looked at as that team that is a bit of an amoeba, where it's more versatility in terms of the players and adapting to the opponent. So you just won over a lot of Roots fans who might have been tuning in and hearing that answer. So well trained in the media, good sir, because you were a part of us for a few months, and that's where I want to go next, actually. You've taken these last couple of months after your Open Cup appearance and been on TV a little bit, and you've been on podcasts a little bit. And it's interesting in other sports, you hear of coaches who take a break from coaching, a little sabbatical, pop into media. Then there's actually things they learn from that time because you're immersing yourself. You're talking to other coaches. You're watching so much more. So that's my question for you. In your brief time that you've spent in the media, is there anything that you've actually picked up, whether it's talking to other coaches, watching all the soccer you just said you watched, that you now can actually take with you and apply?
Definitely. And I would say that the reason why it's helped me is not the things that you mentioned. Yes, I've had conversations with other people with different ideas, but I've had that, right? During my time as a player and as a coach, I've had conversations with plenty of people that don't necessarily see the same things as me. And that's wow, yeah, I didn't think about that. And then you start thinking of other things and whatnot. That wasn't the biggest thing. It's the hardest thing for me in humans is communicating, being able to express yourself in an effective and efficient way, and having somebody understand what you truly mean, right? And coaching is all about that. How can you translate your thoughts that are in your brain and get players to understand what you're thinking and how you want to play? And I think working in the media, you work on that. You work on how can, what I'm going to say is going to be understood by who's, listening. And so that has definitely been a part of an education for me. And I think it's been helpful, and I feel more comfortable speaking to people. I've always been a big talker, but I've always felt a little bit hesitant sometimes in speaking in front of big audiences, right? I remember even elementary school, middle school, high school, when I'd have to do the speech, I'd be nervous, right? My stomach would have butterflies and rumbling and whatnot. And so I've started to feel a little bit more comfortable with that, and definitely been getting better at it. And I think that is so essential to being a good coach, is being able to communicate with your players and have them understand, what ideas you're trying to translate.
And obviously for you, this is a second coaching stint or second try at a head coaching job at the pro level. Last one coming at Sporting Kansas City. You made the playoffs there. You had success there in MLS Next Pro. What from that experience now going into job number 2 for you? And again, you've had experience at different levels, academy and scouting. You mentioned that project before from Peter Vermees and going out and scouting different leagues and stuff like that. But what specifically from your first head coaching job now helps you in your second head coaching job?
I think it's figuring out, what works and what doesn't work. And then how do you, maybe kind of shift into a different idea, right? You definitely have this initial thought of how you want your team to play, but that hardly ever works the way that you expect it. Having said that, you should be able to learn, okay, well, this is something that we were hoping for and we got. This is something that we were hoping for and we didn't get. This is something we didn't even think about, and I see a positive thing that maybe we can, build on. And so I think that's kind of where you start figuring out, and I think good coaches, and look, there's coaches in so many different circumstances, right? You talk about like a Pep Guardiola, he literally gets to build exactly the team that he wants with the ideas that he has. And he's very, very good at that. Not a lot of coaches get that ability, right? To just handpick the players that you want. And so more often than not, especially in American leagues where there's such parity, you want to be able to be reactive sometimes and find ways to, this didn't work, what's the solution to this problem? And with MLS Next Pro, man, that is all you do, right? You're trying to figure out not only what your starting 11 is, because you've been sent 2 or 3 first teamers that now are taking over guys that you were, training with all week and getting prepared for. Now these guys are there. How do they fit in? How do you coach them in, one day or, 30 minutes prior to the game to get them prepared? How do you deal with maybe some of your second teamers that weren't training with you and now they're coming back and haven't been there? And so there's so many moving pieces that it's almost impossible to plan. And so you get really good at the reactionary part of it. And I think that's one thing that I'll be able to do really well, especially with coming in middle of the year, having a short time to kind of like figure things out. And I'm used to that stuff. So I do think that will be hugely beneficial to me.
Last question, maybe the most important one here. Did you get any info from Des Moines Menace on how many Benny Feilhaber jerseys sold? Or for those of you watching on YouTube instead of listening on SiriusXM FC, I'm wearing one of them. Or am I the only soul who actually spent U.S. currency on acquiring one of these?
I think it was you and maybe my family. That's about it. So they said that one was shipped to Maryland. I'm assuming that's where you are right now.
I'm in South Florida right now, but with all the Maryland paraphernalia around me, that's not a bad shout.
Are you a Ravens fan too, or no? Or just
no, we're not there. Just Terps, baby. Got the degree to prove it, and that's it. So we've had plenty of fun battles with your UCLA Bruins over the years. We usually win most of them.
I wouldn't say that.
Benny Feilhaber, new head coach of the Oakland Roots. We appreciate you coming on the show. Best of luck. You hit the ground running here on Saturday against El Paso Locomotive. If you missed any of this or our earlier chat with Ryan Martin, you can catch it on the SiriusXM app or SiriusXM FC's YouTube channel when we return a warp speed whip around of the USL Jägermeister Cup right here on USL All Access.
You're listening to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. Here are your hosts, Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everybody. USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. It has been a whirlwind of a show. We've seen movement in the East. We got to talk to Ryan Martin. We've seen movement in the West. We got to talk to Benny Feilhaber. We're tight on time. Joe Malfa still with me. Our pets' heads are falling off. And we got Jaeger bombs. USL Jägermeister Cup. Again, sponsor exemption is on the shelf because they still haven't sent us any promotional materials to test out whether or not these Jaeger bombs are good. The kids talk about it, though. And in my glory days, there were a couple for me. We're going to give you a synopsis of everything because we're moving a million miles an hour. 7 of 38 teams played 2 games, have 6 points. Think about that for a second. Sac, Monterey, Indy, Birmingham, Rhode Island, Hartford, and Loudoun. I can read and talk apparently at the same time. We'll talk about tiebreakers later. Conversely, 6 teams out of the 38 went over. They've played 2. We've got Orange County, Westchester SC, Pittsburgh, Richmond, the Charleston Battery, and Union Omaha. Union Omaha, by the way, even though on 0 points, they're the only one out of that group that have played only one match. There is stuff going on all over the place. I digress. Sugar Rush, caffeine, brings me to Joe. Talk about Espresso, Joe, and what you've seen in Jaeger Cup so far.
Sounds less than a Sugar Rush and more of a Jaeger Rush for you. We need to, get
Jaeger bombs! Someone's got a goal call for that waiting.
Oh, well, we'll see at some point. My early reaction is it's been a ton of fun. I think that's exactly what USL was hoping for and has gotten out of this, getting all 38 teams involved after seeing how fun it was last year just on the USL League One level, especially with an eye toward promotion relegation in the future. It's been great talking to coaches coming into these games. And one underrated aspect that I think I've enjoyed the most from the first couple of rounds, and we get into the next couple of phases of this tournament later this month and then in July, it's the player scouting. It's an opportunity for championship teams playing against League One teams to see who's maybe ready to come up, and conversely, championship teams who get some squad rotation and maybe a guy impresses on that day and he's not getting enough minutes in USL Championship, so maybe there's a loan to a League One team in their region because it's all regional based. Maybe there's a loan where he can get some starting minutes there. So on every level, it has been fun. It's been great to see. As you said, we're pressed for time, so we can't necessarily dive into every single group around the country, but let's spotlight one each. Which one intrigues you the most at this point?
Love that point of view, by the way, buddy. Really unique, as are some of the tiebreakers within these groups. I'm going to stick with Group 1 here because the tiebreakers are already at play. Thought it would take us much closer to 4 games to get there, but no, not in fact. Sacramento Republic, Las Vegas Lights, Monterey Bay, all on 6 points. Sac holds the tiebreaker over Las Vegas with their 4-win over the weekend. But as this becomes unique in the concepts, Las Vegas, having played one more game, they actually hold the points per game over Monterey. It's because of the goal differential. Las Vegas carries the tiebreaker over Monterey. As to why? Not points per game. It's because of goals scored. They want to score more goals. So it doesn't matter that you're in the plus-minus category, plus for Monterey, minus for Las Vegas Lights. They got more goals in the back of the net. Alta eliminated, having played 3 games. They've only got 2. They can't get above the 6 mark. They got 1 left. So Group 1, to me, even right now as we're talking and everything's crazy matched up atop, Sac still got to play Spokane. Spokane could end up the group winner. We don't know how this is going to shake out. And again, the goals for going to be attacking style football is a fun one for me. How about you, buddy?
I'm looking at Group 4. I just called the match this weekend. It was Portland Hearts of Pine against Detroit City. Speaking of goals and the whole concept of Jägermeister Cup, that game had 6 of them. Portland scored 4 of them in front of the Mainers up there. It was a great crowd. Bobby Murphy was named the coach of the round. That team just came out today. He deserved it. JT Kamara was terrific. He was in the best 11 for the round. That group right now is kind of a mess. There was 1 point in the live table on the day where 5 teams were tied on 3 points each. It didn't finish that way. Rhode Island won. Hartford came back to win. So those two are separated up top with 6 points, and there's a few teams on 3. But right now, that's another one of those groups where it could be anybody's right now, and all the games have been fun and high scoring every step of the way as well.
Love that. By the way, if the tournament ended today and we got a chance to really dig into these unique tiebreakers, Sac and Indy hold a tiebreaker that goes all the way based upon games played, points, goals for. Neither one has given up. They would go to disciplinary points, which right now, Sac holds the tiebreaker. Only 2 yellow cards to their name. Indy and the Fighting Sean McCauley's come in with 7. So, Neil Collins, job well done halfway through the tournament. Again, I know it was a million miles an hour. We tried to give you as much as possible. If you missed any of it whatsoever, go check out this edition of USL All Access or any previous editions you've missed on the SiriusXM app. You can also catch it on the USL YouTube channel. Say goodbye, Joe. Bye-bye.
This is USL All Access. If you missed any portion of the program, listen back anytime on the SXM app.